Both of these recipes are identical. They were baked at the same time and the same temperature, but in one version, the dough was allowed to sit for 18 hours versus just 2 hours for the other. The visual difference is obvious, but something else surprised us even more. Part of the reason for creating this channel is to learn more about the science of food, and in the process teach others. Why do cookies come out flat? Why do cakes sink in the middle? Why did this recipe say to let the dough sit for 12 to 18 hours? What we particularly like about this recipe is that it's dead simple, requiring only 7 ingredients. And it's versatile because you can just swap out the 1/3 cup of raisins for cranberries or walnuts. After adding the flour, sugar, and cinnamon, we mixed the dough together, covered each bowl with saran wrap, and let them sit for their respective amounts of time. Before we baked them, we wanted to compare the differences in the textures of the dough. I don't know about y'all, but they look nearly the same. The one that sat for 18 hours does appear to be a little bit more lumpy than the one that sat for 2 hours. This is probably because of the carbon dioxide being released from the yeast causing bubbles of air to be trapped inside the dough. And it's here we can begin to see why you would let it sit for 12 to 18 hours versus just 2 hours. Letting it sit for longer allows more carbon dioxide to form, which gets trapped as air bubbles within the bread, which then become holes, giving the bread its volume. The consistency of the dough, however, was slightly different. The one that only sat for 2 hours seemed a little wet, while the one that sat for 18 hours was easier to handle and seemed to hold its shape better. This was a little perplexing because wet dough typically makes larger holes due to allowing the air to travel more freely during the rise, but the results tell a completely different story. After baking them at the same temperature and at the same amount of time, the results were in. It really does look like one of them was cooked for longer, but they were both baked for the exact same length of time. This is the part that still confuses me. I'm not exactly sure why the top of the one that only sat for 2 hours is darker. Maybe somehow the sugars broke down in the one that sat for 18 hours, so that the top didn't caramelize as much as it did in the 2-hour version. Let me know in the comments below why you think this might have happened. Cutting them open solidifies our thinking on the reasoning for leaving the dough to sit for 12 to 18 hours before baking. The one that sat longer is a lot more full, with a lot more holes in the bread due to the amount of air trapped inside the dough. The one that only sat for 2 hours is a lot more compact, with the holes being a lot smaller. So we see what happens to them visually when you let one sit longer than the other. But what about the taste? For us, that was the most interesting part of this experiment.
Dutch oven cinnamon raisin bread.
There's a very big difference in the way they turned out.
So we were curious. We've never seen a recipe that asked you to let your dough set for so long. 12 to 18 hours. Because a lot of what we've seen is you let the dough double in size.
Right. Hour and a half, 2 hours max.
Yeah. No, you're going for that one first. The flavor is good. It's very dense. Really?
I taste like zero difference between the two. 100% honest.
I mean, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of it, maybe the slightest difference in texture. But yeah, the flavor is the same.
So if you don't care about what it looks like and you're short on time, go for the 2-hour version.
That's interesting. I was really curious.
I thought for sure that there would be a difference in taste.
Right. So, Max, do you know which one you have?
I don't know.
That's the 18-hour one.
Oh, okay.
Parker, you have the 2-hour one. So now you're going to switch and test the other one.
Well,
I can tell the difference.
I think bakeries have been scamming us. They taste the same.
What do you think, Parker?
This one's softer.
The 18-hour one.